Live from the KHOU 11 studios, it's Great Day Houston. And now, here's your host, Deborah Duncan.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Great Day Houston. We're starting with something a little different this morning, an historical piece celebrating three music legends. Today is a bittersweet anniversary. 55 years ago today, a monumental event in rock and roll history occurred. It was on a cold winter day in Iowa. Although you may have heard the story before, chances are you didn't know there was a Houston connection to that fateful day. And you might not know the role the Bayou City has played in helping to shape the path of music history. So for the record, the records started right here in a big way, as you'll see.
A long, long time ago.
It was February 3rd, 1959.
Hello, baby.
Rock and roll was still in its infancy.
Golly gee, what have you done to me?
But one of its darkest days began to unfold.
We interrupt this program for a special news bulletin. Three young singers who soared to the heights of show business on the current rock and roll craze were killed today in the crash of a light plane in an Iowa snow flurry. The singers were identified as Ritchie Valens, Buddy Holly, and J.P. Richardson, known professionally as the Big Bopper. Cause of the crash was due to inclement weather conditions.
On the day the music died, it always brings me back to that plane crash.
I mean, they were the godfathers of rock and roll, and they kind of showed you how it was done.
It was a really big deal. Performers of that magnitude passing away in one accident.
Fans were in shock. No one could believe that three of the biggest stars in rock and roll were suddenly gone forever, all in one day.
But February made me shiver with every paper I deliver.
They may have called it the day the music died, but some of that music was born right here in the Bayou City.
Oh, you sweet thing.
How that happened is really the story of the Big Bopper himself.
He's an icon to us. I knew his name probably before I knew how to talk.
J.P. Richardson, or Jape as friends called him, was born in Sabine Pass, Texas on October 24th, 1930, just a stone's throw from Port Arthur, where another iconic rock singer would be born, and died tragically, Janis Joplin. Young J.P. grew up alongside KHOU brothers in Beaumont. He eventually became a radio disc jockey at Beaumont's KTRM radio.
He was a radio DJ, and he enjoyed the recording environment and was real familiar with the production environment.
When he met the daughter of a Louisiana sugarcane farmer, he was smitten. It was love at first sight. And on April 18, 1952, J.P. married Adrienne Frigiu, or Teetsy as she was called, so named by her father, who said she was no bigger than a tsetse fly. Then the couple welcomed their first child, Deborah Joy, who was the apple of her daddy's eye. Eventually, J.P. developed an on-air character persona he called the Big Bopper. He took his name from a popular dance craze of the day, the bop, where bopping on the dance floor was all the rage.
I ain't got no money, honey.
He didn't grow up rich, you know. He played that character and he enjoyed that time, and then he went home and enjoyed his family.
J.P. was mild-mannered, but the Big Bopper, his alter ego, well, that was a jive-talking hipster who filled in his 240-pound frame with a big belly laugh. And crazy antics.
You know what I like.
The Big Bopper began playing the music of another character who went by a moniker, the Hillbilly Cat, also known as Elvis Presley. The Big Bopper welcomed young Elvis to Beaumont for a series of concerts back in June of 1955.
I mean, he was the voice down here in Southeast Texas at KTRM.
When he went into the Army, he was a radar operator, I believe. So he liked audio equipment.
After a 2-year stint in the Army, J.P. then returned to his DJ post at KTRM. On April 29, 1957, J.P. set out to break the world's record for the longest continuous radio broadcast, surviving on Lone Star beer, knee-high soda, and ice cream malts made with raw eggs. After 5 days, J.P. broke the record while playing All Shook Up by Elvis Presley. He had stayed on the air for 122 hours and 8 minutes, playing 1,821 records. He also lost 35 pounds during the ordeal. Now that he was truly a celebrity, the Big Bopper was bitten by the bug to be in show business himself. He turned his sights on becoming a songwriter and a performer.
Chantilly lace and a pretty face and a ponytail hanging down.
In the summer of 1958, the Big Bopper headed down the highway en route to Houston.
Well, the fact that he recorded Chantilly Lace here is kind of stitched into the history of Sugar Hill.
The story of Chantilly Lace is quite fascinating because it's actually the B-side of the single. The Purple People Eater meets the Witch Doctor, and Chantilly Lace was supposed to be the B-side, cut here at Gold Star, Sugar Hill. Well, I guess the Bopper forgot that he needed a B-side, so he was driving from Beaumont to Houston for the recording session. And there in the car, he wrote the lyrics to Chantilly Lace.
And had it completely finished by the time he reached the Houston recording studio called Gold Star.
And of course, really didn't have a song until he got with the musicians. They kind of sat and rehearsed it a bit until he turned a set of lyrics into a song.
The record was first released in Houston, and the Bayou City went wild over the Big Bopper.
My mom loved the Big Bopper. I mean, we had all the records I grew up with. Hello, baby.
Barry Coughing is a Houston-raised, award-winning Hollywood producer, songwriter, and music supervisor, having co-written the #1 hit, How Do You Talk to an Angel, and placing music in such films as The Blind Side.
And my mom thought, you know, Buddy Holly was tough and, you know, that kind of stuff.
Hello, a little Red Riding Hood. I heard about you, Alice, all been good.
He was fun and sort of laid the groundwork for the Motown people that would follow.
Oh, honey.
You know, him and Buddy Holly brought a lot of attention to Texas and what was going on down here in the Gulf Coast.
On August 9th, 1958, the nation met the Bopper.
Chantilly Lace and the Big Bopper. Hello, baby. Yeah, this is the Big Bopper speaking.
He was different. He wore leopard skin jackets on stage. I mean, who did that?
He understood that it's having a good time, putting on a show, being outrageous, and getting away with it.
Oh, baby, that's the one I like.
When I think of the Big Bopper, of course, I always think of Chantilly Lace. You know, that song just, my daddy always sang it around the house, and I always knew him by his first name, because if you knew him by his name, J.P. Richardson, then you felt like you knew him more.
Like Elvis and Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper was among the first Southern stars to play before integrated audiences. The music did not discriminate.
The music was just so important to him, and being creative and being able to work with all different kinds of people.
By year's end, Chantilly Lace was the third most played song of 1958, and it had topped the Billboard pop charts at #6. The Houston-born song went gold, selling over 1 million records by January 1959.
A classic.
Sadly, the Bopper never got to receive his gold record.
He only had so many months as the Big Bopper, and really hitting that point where he was actually getting his music spread around and people were listening to it. And he had all these hits, and then, you know, tragically he was taken away.
There's just a very wonderful place in my heart every time I think about him.
Every time I hear Chantilly Lace, I smile. It's a happy thought.
Dan Workman is a top record producer and engineer, having worked with such legendary artists as ZZ Top, Clay Walker, and Beyonce. He is also president and CEO of Houston's Sugar Hill Studios.
The music business and music is something that's really near and dear to me. And when you think of 3 performers all passing away at once, it makes me hopeful that that will never happen again. You know, it's sort of like, why do they have to be on a small plane together?
And the 3 men I admire most, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, they caught the last train for the coast the day the music died.
Still to come, why were all 3 singers on that doomed flight? And today, is it possible the Bopper's spirit resides in Houston?
If there's any ghosts that are around here, you know, the Big Bopper might be in this room, but he might just as easily be in the control room.
And later, we're going retro on our runway. Why 50s fashion is in again.